This is the Crowdcrux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Briggman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project. With your host, Sal Briggman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at fulfillrite.com. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. On this show, we get into how to successfully raise money with Kickstarter or Indiegogo. How do you smash your goal? How do you get funding? How do you get traffic? How do you come on this podcast as a success story? It's kind of funny, actually, that we've had a lot of people who have listened to this show just like you, gone out there, they applied the things they learned, they launched a campaign, then they hit me up and they're like, hey, Sal, like, I listened to your show. How do I get on? And they're like, yeah, we just, blew past the six-figure mark, or now we're raised, $75,000, or we're at 150K. It's so awesome, like, and I think exciting and inspirational that we're able to have like those type of karmic events where like a listener comes onto the show. It's really cool. And today, I think you're going to really like today's episode from like a different type of perspective. If you go into the archives of our show, we have a lot of like, entrepreneurs that come on that share what worked with their specific campaign, or if they've done a few different projects on Kickstarter. Today, we're actually going to be interviewing an expert in this industry that we have dubbed the Obi-Wan Kenobi of crowdfunding, which is a pretty epic name. But Richard Bliss has been in the industry for a long time now. He got into the industry a little bit before me. He started his podcast where he basically, kind of similar to me, shares Kickstarter success stories and goes in deep into like basically how do you raise money with crowdfunding. This is the Funding the Dream podcast by Richard Bliss. He took a little bit of a break from crowdfunding, but he's come back and he's now kind of sharing with you in this podcast episode, number one, some tips and advice for beginners out there in the audience that are just getting started, as well as his own, view of how crowdfunding has transformed over the years, what it's like for him to be a part of this industry, this growing industry, and some of his thoughts there when it comes to this fundraising medium, how you can be more successful in it, some of the hacks and tricks that he has discovered along the way, as well as you get to learn a little bit about how he can help your project. He's now kind of doing a lot of high-end executive coaching, so he has a lot of great stuff to say there, and that's also something that I think being a leader in your space, being a business leader is so freaking important, man. I was reading this incredible book by John C. Maxwell. I think it's called like the 21 Laws of Leadership or something like that. I might be botching the name a little bit, but basically, I kind of got to this point in my own career where I'm like, I can be super effective and efficient. I can work hard and be passionate, but at the end of the day, there's only one me. There's only one me, or a bunch of freelancers that help you out or something like that. How do you level up to like the next level where you not are just fulfilling your own vision, but like this larger vision for your company? And when I was reading this book by John C. Maxwell, it was basically saying that your success is limited by your leadership ability. Let that sink in for a second. Your ability to be successful is limited. There's a cap, if you will. There's a glass ceiling. There's a cap on your success. And that cap is essentially your leadership ability. So you can be super effective, you can be working hard, you can be the jack of all trades, but if you don't have the ability to lead people, you will always be limited in your success. And John C. Maxwell gave this a great example of McDonald's and how originally when McDonald's was founded, it was founded by these two brothers, and they kind of made a nice small business for themselves. They had like a few restaurants. They were really obsessed with quality, and it was great. There's a whole movie on this as well. But then Ray Kroc came in, and he brought a whole new level of leadership ability to that business, and he was able to expand it to thousands and thousands of locations and millions and millions of dollars in revenue because he built out an organization, because he understood the secret of leadership, if you will. And leadership also is one of those things where I think with a crowdfunding campaign, if you are able to assemble a team around you for this project, it doesn't even have to be like a highly paid team. I'm just talking about someone who can help you with social media, someone who can help you from an advice standpoint, like a coach, someone who can help you from a marketing standpoint, putting together the page, and you are the one who is staying in your lane and doing whatever it is that you're best at. Maybe you're the engineer, maybe you're the designer, maybe you are the marketing person and you need help on these other sides. That is the hallmark of success. You're basically, your success is capped at your leadership ability. And the more that you're able to build a team around yourself, and the more that you're able to invest in this actual business and this project and upgrade your leadership ability, the more success in the long run that you will see, and you'll actually build a system that kind of is bigger than yourself. I think that's everyone's goal, is to build something that is bigger than just ourselves and just what we could basically pull off. It's kind of like it's a really interesting book, so I recommend that. But without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode where we talk with the one and only, the Obi-Wan of crowdfunding, Richard Bliss, and the host of the Funding the Dream podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we have a crowdfunding legend in the studio, Richard Bliss, the host of the Funding the Dream on Kickstarter podcast, one of the first podcasters in this industry and also a pillar, I think, in the crowdfunding industry. His podcast actually inspired me to get started with podcasting. This was like way back before podcasting was cool. And he's come on the show. We're really lucky to have him to talk a little bit about some tips that you should know when it comes to launching your campaign, and also ways that he can help you out. Richard, welcome to the show.
Salvador, thanks for that introduction. I had to cover up the mic. I was laughing. You make me feel old.
That's not my intention, but I would say you're a veteran. A veteran is a better word for that.
A veteran, that'll work. I'll take that. A veteran, yes. But you and I have been doing this for a very long time, and it's a thrill for me to be on your show. I've watched it grow and evolve as you yourself have contributed so much to the to the category of crowdfunding and help so many people. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Totally, man. So I kind of would like to get started actually understanding a bit of your passion, because you've been doing this for so long here. Like, you got more than 300 episodes on your podcast, Funding the Dream. What kind of has kept you going? What are you passionate about when it comes to crowdfunding?
I am passionate from the very beginning because of three distinct things that crowdfunding has done to us as a society. And I know that sounds kind of big, and these three things are, first of all, we have always had this stigma when it comes to asking for money, right? Now, crowdfunding's been around now for quite a few years, but back when I started, when you started, that wasn't the case. And if I was to walk up to somebody on the street and I'm in a suit and I say, hey, could you give me $20? I want to go start a, whatever it might be. I want to make a backpack. And the person would look at me like, are you nuts? So this idea of actually asking people for money or giving money has always been perceived as a bit of a taboo subject in society. Now, crowdfunding's been around for a long time because every time you go to church on Sunday, the plate is passed, and that is a form of crowdfunding that we're familiar with. But any other form of crowdfunding, when I first started, was associated with the person on the side of the street with the cardboard sign.
Totally.
And that was, right? And so that piece of conversation has been so beneficial for us in society, because crowdfunding now has allowed us to tackle individual passion project of so many people that would normally never have been able to even walk in the door of a bank or some type of VC and ask for money. Instead, they turn to other people who are passionate about seeing other people succeed. So that's number one. Number two is this passion. We carry this passion around with us, and it's very hard sometimes for us to share that. One of my passions and the podcast, my podcast is oftentimes has that, is board gaming. I've been involved with board gaming for my entire life, and it's a passion. But for a long time, I was very hesitant to share that with people because, my mother always looked at me like, are you ever going to grow up and like get a real passion, like investing or something? And I'm like, no, board gaming's kind of it.
I was
hesitant.
Yeah, I was going to say, I played Dungeons and Dragons, and I think my mom told me that one time when I was younger.
And I was playing it before the advanced rule book came out. I was playing it back in the 70s. And so, yes, I remember very clearly those type of things. But the board gaming side of things was my passion. Well, so many of us carry around a passion that is important to us, and that's very hard for us to share that. Crowdfunding allows you to take that passion and put it out there. Now comes the third piece, which makes crowdfunding so difficult. And that is we're going to combine those two, a personal passion and a taboo of money, and we're going to mix it with a judgment of the public, which means my passion is going to be put out there, and the public, strangers, are going to judge the validity of my passion, and they're going to do it with money. And that is a terrifying experience.
It's scary.
And so it is very scary. And the one thing I have always encountered with so many people, not so much anymore because success overcomes that fear, but in the early days, people were terrified to put their ideas out there, terrified that they would succeed, that people would start judging them with money. Mm-hmm. And that's where I got motivated, was to say, I can help you overcome that fear, so whatever passion you carry inside of your heart, you can actually understand, which is hence the name of my podcast, Funding the Dream. As I know you have a dream, I know you're afraid to share it, but come on, we can do this together, and people will believe in you.
I know that early on, you and Jamie Stegmaier started to put out some really great content. How did you guys connect? And can you tell us a little bit about that? Because he does board games as well. It seems like he kind of shares that passion.
He does. And so I won't put any words in Jamie's mouth. I'll just say it from my perspective. One of the things I'm able to do, and so the board game industry now is the largest funding category on Kickstarter. But when I started, there were only 100 successful projects in the year 2011 when I started, and they only raised a total of $2 million. Well, now a $2 million Kickstarter campaign of a board game is kind of like, oh, okay.
It's like nothing, yeah.
Right. It's like nothing. But that was all of those projects, 100 projects, $2 million, and everybody thought the bubble was going to burst. And so I had an opportunity, and that's actually what brought me in. I'm in the tech industry. I live in a world of constant trends that come and go with speed that is shocking to anybody in any other industry. And so I'm used to seeing these trends. And so early on, I noticed that board gamers were talking about Kickstarter as kind of this thing that they went to because up until that point, they had to take a second mortgage on their house. Yet they're finding success. A few people were finding the Michael Mendez's with Tasty Minstrel Games, with their Eminent Domain game, a few of these other ones. But they weren't making the connection beyond themselves. And what I mean by that is that they saw their effort, they put it out there, a few friends and family, and they raised $10,000 and thought that they were rich. And that was amazing. But I started to see that, no, this is a movement that is going to transform the way that we do business in this space, particularly the board game space, because it was capital intensive and needed an infusion of cash to make a transformation. Jamie, so what that meant is I was always paying attention to anybody who popped up. When Jamie came out with Viticulture, it was obvious that I am old, Salvador, just so we're going to be clear, I am old. So I use the term, this young man, at the time I looked at him, this young man had figured out how to invest the right amount of time, concern, care, and product quality to bypass the traditional means of production in the board game industry. And I recognized it immediately that he was about to transform something. And so at the time, he was a little shy. He admits he's an introvert. And so I said, why don't you come on my show? I'll do all the talking. And you do all the education. Teach people what you have spent so much time focused on. Now, to Jamie's credit, he'd been blogging every day for 6 years. And so it wasn't like he wasn't used to communicating, but his skill is his ability to communicate with his backers and his network and his crowd. And so it was easy for me to identify that. And I started going around talking to people in the industry saying, look, you need to pay attention to this guy. He is doing something transformational. And I told him early on that he was in a position with his company, and I still say it. I had a conversation with somebody this week about it. That when these trends happen, that, for example, Asmodee's conglomeration of bringing everybody together is opening up opportunities for other companies to step into the void that Asmodee is creating. And I shared with Jamie way back when that he had the opportunity of being another Fantasy Flight, of being one of the major players, because as the market shifted, a vacuum is left and people look for leaders to step up. And the way he did it and the way his company was structured, he was in a position to be a leader. And so that's how we kind of got started.
I think that's such a good testament as well to kind of what you do also, working with these executives and teaching them about the opportunities that are out there. And even me, like before this podcast, Richard was talking to me about my LinkedIn profile and like how it can be better and like these different ways. And I think that's kind of naturally seems like where you fall into is sort of helping people and helping them identify opportunities and kind of leveling up to this level where they weren't previously. You know what I mean?
I absolutely do. And it really is, when you ask me my passion, I get to work with some people who I'll do a name drop. You don't know who he is, but if you've ever gone to the Notre Dame University, there is the Mendoza School of Business. It's named after Tom Mendoza. Tom Mendoza is a personal friend of mine, and he's one of my clients, and he is who I have helped coach on social media, LinkedIn, blogging, that type of thing. Well, this is a man who has a business school, the number one business school in America named after him, undergraduate business school. And yet he will always turn and say, Richard taught me everything I know. I get a lot of pleasure out of just being able to know that I had that kind of an impact on somebody who's incredibly successful in life. Salvador, you have demonstrated the ability to be incredibly successful. The fact that you give me a little bit of that credit is incredibly satisfying to me, to know that I did something in my life that influenced somebody's life for the better. And that's kind of what motivates me.
That's awesome. And I think it's also just so cool to see transformations like that happen. Maybe we can talk a little bit about so you do this consulting for people that are looking to level up their game and also, I guess, become better leaders in their space and these different things. And you also have the Kickstarter podcast. Do they work together at all? Like what do you usually help creators with in this space?
If you followed my podcast, you will know that there has been a slowdown in the amount of content that I've put out. And one of the things is because the need for what I do is actually diminishing. Salvador, you're a perfect reason for that, is that you are able to focus so well on what you do, and the amount of content that you deliver through your YouTube channel, through your books, through your blog, through your podcast, that my contribution becomes less and less. In the early days, I was helping people overcome their fear and learn this new thing. Well, okay, but everybody's learned it now, and that fear has gone away. And so what I've done is kind of moved on to the next thing, and that is helping executives, senior leaders, overcome their fear of stepping out and being very public facing, and helping them understand how to have a voice and master the language of social media, something that comes very natural to somebody like you, but doesn't come natural to somebody who's in their late 50s, early 60s, who's never had that opportunity to teach them. And somebody who's very proficient in social media, who grew up with it, oftentimes struggles to understand what that older person doesn't even know. And so that's one of the things I've always encountered, is that it's hard to teach somebody something new if you don't know why they don't know it. Mm-hmm. You don't know what they don't know. And so what I've discovered is that my podcast has been great for me, because I just started the podcast because I wanted to learn. How do you do a podcast? Well, you have to find a topic. Well, I like board games. There are so many board game podcasts. There was no way I was going to do that. What do I know? I know marketing. I know business. I know leadership. Can I do that with Kickstarter and board games? Yeah. And that's where the Funding the Dream came from, is teaching you and inviting guests on with my network that allow you to learn how to do this. And so that's about the only crossover a little bit right now. I'm in the process of launching a new one called The Digital Executive, a new podcast, to do the very thing that I did with Kickstarter to do with executives when it comes to social media. And so there is that crossover, but I've learned it's been a teaching experience more than it's actually been a business driver.
I like that name, the Digital Executive. That's pretty cool. One of the things I kind of want to ask you, just in terms of crowdfunding, because I do want to talk a little bit also about the consulting that you offer, but one of the questions I had for you about crowdfunding is, having been around this industry for a while, what are some of the changes that you've noticed, like one or two simple changes, since you got started in the early days up until now?
The biggest one that's by far, and that everybody laments about the fact, is that you no longer can come to crowdfunding with an idea. And that is disappointing, because so often people come to crowdfunding because they don't have any money. And then when you tell them that, well, you have to have money now in order to be successful launching crowdfunding. Now, that's not exactly true, but you have to have artwork. You have to have some kind of prototype. You've had to have something. You've had to spend money on some type of marketing and hype and buzz. You've got to spend all this time and focus on making sure that the product that you're about to launch is ready for prime time. The days of, oh, here's this idea I have. Will you fund my idea? That doesn't work anymore on crowdfunding. And that's probably the single biggest change, and disappointing for a lot of people who are just coming into it because they think, oh, I've got this idea. I'll throw it out there and I'll make lots of money. And I know you encounter those people all the time.
So it kind of leveled up the quality of the marketing that you have to have, and just, I guess, in general, the level of the campaign you have.
Yeah. And so I use a bit of a rule of thumb. I think it still applies. And that is, your video can be personal or even amateur, but your artwork has to be professional. And what I mean by that is that you can take an iPhone and tell a story about your product, show your product, demonstrate your product with just an iPhone. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Now, if it is perfect, obviously, especially if you're trying to drive $100,000 to $1 million worth of revenue from a Kickstarter project, it helps that it's professional. But if you're just kind of got this passion project, and you're trying to raise $25,000, $50,000, you can do it with an iPhone. But when it comes to the artwork, and what I mean by that is the renderings, the photography, the demonstration, the artwork that goes on the page itself or the landing page of your product, that has to be top quality, professional quality. Yeah. Top-notch professional quality, because people will be turned off by hand drawings, by fuzzy, low-grade artwork. That just doesn't fly. And so I've seen many campaigns succeed simply because the artwork was stunning and outstanding. And we come back to judging a book by its cover. The cover of the book looked awesome. Inside wasn't so good, but by that time it was too late for them to figure that out.
I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. We were talking a little bit about this before the interview, and that's, I think, also the big change we saw is that people are building companies off of crowdfunding. Like, you have people who have launched 10 campaigns, or now they have 10 employees, and it's all because of their successful crowdfunding campaign. I think that's insane,
It really is, and it's part of the vision that I saw early on when I talked about this shift and this vacuum that was being created, that the industry was ripe for disruption. And that's what's very exciting for me. I got to tell you, that gets me motivated more probably almost than anything anymore, is that people now are realizing that they can quit their day jobs. And it's not just the person who's creating the product. Sometimes, for example, artists, and I come back to the artwork, artists now who used to do this as a side gig have found the ability to quit their day jobs and be a full-time artist supporting the crowdfunding and Kickstarter space, because there is enough money to sustain their lifestyle so they can do the very thing that they have a passion for, and that is create great art. That art goes into Kickstarter projects, but still they get to have a job now, independent, doing their own thing. Or, as you said, launching their company. Now, go back to Jamie Stegmaier. He has a single employee company, but that's his choice and the way he's wanted to do it. But there's a whole bunch of other people. John Covey over at Genius Games just bought another company. And I remember when he started off with a baby and a job and wanted to do this full time. And now he has a full-time company at Genius Games. You're seeing more and more of these type of people who are being able to pursue their passion because there is a sustainable income. I had a great conversation with Matt Leacock, who doesn't really do Kickstarter, but he is the creator of Pandemic, the board game, as a wide variety of other ones. And he talked about how it has allowed him now to quit. He was a software developer here in Silicon Valley, and he was able to quit his job. And now that continued success allows him to maintain a lifestyle where he's able to do what his passion is. Crowdfunding is making that possible.
It's insane to me the level of relationships that you can build in community nowadays, just doing a campaign and also in social media in general. And I also think, on the baby front, like I've heard there's this effect among entrepreneurs that once you have a baby, like you get way more productive because you don't have any time to just like screw around and stuff. Like you got to be focused, because you have so much limited time and like that time has to be used so effectively.
Well,
I don't know if that's true.
Well, that's one reason. The other reason is because 2:00 in the morning, you're awake, the baby's awake, and you're trying to get back to sleep. And so you have nothing else to do. So you're sitting at your computer quietly typing while you're trying to get your baby back to sleep. That's another reason, is that your productivity hours now just stretch into 24/7 because that baby just sets the schedule. And so that is another reason. But yes,
you want to level up with a baby.
You gotta, yes. I've had five, so we're doing pretty good there.
Yeah, that's great, man. When it comes to some of these other advice or tips, I want to just ask you one more question on the crowdfunding front. A lot of people out there nowadays they're beginning their campaign, they're feeling a lot of fear and uncertainty. Is there any other kind of nugget that you can give them when it comes to what they should be doing with the campaign? Things that you've seen, you've interviewed so many people. Any kind of secrets, if you will, that you could pass on to the audience?
Let me try. Two things. I'm going to say two things. One, you've heard me say this. Every person who's ever heard my podcast say this. You don't have a funding problem. You have a crowd problem. Solve the crowd first and the funding will follow. And so that's the number one piece of advice I give to my people who come to me time and time again. Find the crowd, find the tribe, and you and I have had this conversation, find the people who are interested in what it is that you want to create and sell them. Once you find that, now give to that crowd as much as possible. Free advice, free opportunity, input, that type of thing. When the time comes for you to ask for something back, the crowd will now be prepared to say thank you. And that thank you will be in a means of supporting your crowdfunding campaign. That is probably the single most fundamental ingredient to success in the crowdfunding space. When somebody comes to me in the middle of their campaign and says, look, I've hit the middle of the slumps, I'm slowed down, can I be on your podcast to boost some exposure? That is the wrong thing to say. You should have anticipated this. There's so much data out there to show that you should have been planning email campaigns, interviews, all of that should have been planned long beforehand, knowing that that slump's going to be there. We all know it's going to be there. What are you doing to make sure that it happens? And I had a gentleman on the show just recently, Fickle was the campaign, and most of his effort went into that downtime, doing interviews and doing giveaways and hyping up the activity during that time to get those little bumps in that time in the slump. So that would be my advice. Build your crowd first and then anticipate and plan for that slump. Don't get discouraged, but plan for it with all kinds of different things that you can do.
Yeah, and even just the fact that you, the person listening to this episode, you are light years ahead of everyone else out there. I mean, just even listening to Richard and like to hear about some of these techniques, most people out there aren't preparing to the level that you are. So kudos to you if you're listening to this one.
Well, I'm going to say absolutely. I had somebody recently reach out to me because a friend said, oh, hey, I know Richard Bliss. You have a board game. You should talk to him if you're going to put it on Kickstarter. And I got on the phone with them and they asked a favor. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And I get on the phone and I said, so I know in your area, there's a gaming group that does playtesting. Have you been there? He's like, oh, there is? I've never been there before. Really? I said, okay, well, I also know there's a Facebook group that dedicated to your genre. Have you been out there? No. Where's that? And I suddenly found myself on this call doing the research for this person and sending them links to all these. And I stopped myself and I said, what am I doing? Why am I the one doing all the research for this guy who just simply called up and said, I got this idea. I want to put it on Kickstarter. What advice can you give me? And I suddenly realized, oh, man, dude, the advice is go do your homework. And I don't mean that in a flippant way, but there is so much content out there, blogs, videos, podcasts, people you can talk to, other conferences you can go to, right? I mean, it doesn't end compared to when you and I started, there was nothing. There was anecdotal conversations and there were hit and misses. Now there are proven track records. I mean, your book, your audio book that allows people just to plug it in and just a playbook.
Yeah, it's a playbook.
Here's a playbook. Here you go. That type of content did not exist in the past. And so before you come talk to me or you, please make sure that you're not wasting both of our times because otherwise it becomes very frustrating.
The final question that I want to ask you here is on the Bliss Point Consulting. So when it comes to this consulting, we have people who are listening to the podcast who, they have a full-time job, or maybe they're already an executive and they're considering crowdfunding for their business or launching something that they've been always wanting to. Maybe they're always been wanting to do a board game, but they're an executive and stuff. Could you just touch a little bit about where people can learn about that and also what you can do for them with the consulting there?
Yeah, my consulting I have dialed back my consulting. I'm very selective because one of the things I believe in the consulting side is that in order to be really successful at consulting somebody on a crowdfunding project, you need to understand, you, the consultant, need to understand their market deeply, because there is language, there is offerings. You can go through the basics, and Salvador, you do a great job of laying out those basics. You and I had talked about it earlier about here are the different things you can do to test the market with your messaging, your product, and your price, which are fantastic. But when it comes to understanding the market deeply, it's very difficult for an outside consultant like me. I've had some clients where I failed because they came to me with a product or an idea that I thought was solid, but I just fundamentally did not understand their market, and I was not able to help them with that. So I've been able to ease back. My consulting now is mostly around brand building and specifics. If there's something specific that you want me to know, and obviously what I do with executives and companies when it comes to helping them understand how to leverage social media for selling, social media for branding, and how to create and craft a message. That's what that mostly does. When it comes to, and I still get the requests on the crowdfunding side. The crowdfunding side, it's okay, I'm going to have to decide, we're going to sit down and be very clear on what you need from me and what I need from you. Because oftentimes, Salvador, you already know this, a lot of times people are looking for a shortcut. They want a consultant to come in and do it for them. Not just teach them how, but to actually do it. And I am in no way or position to actually do their campaign. I've done those in the past, and some of them were very successful. A couple of them raised $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, and I was very pleased about that. But those days are gone, because now you're going to have to do the work yourself, and it's a lot of work. And I don't think people can afford me to be the one doing the work. I can give them some advice, but they're going to have to do the work themselves.
Totally. My last question for you here is for someone who's...
Wait. I think this is the third last question.
Yeah, I know, right? Hey, you caught on to one of my techniques.
Is that what it is? All right. Well, okay, here we go. This is...
Final question.
No. I enjoy the opportunity to be here and just to chat with you and get to know you a little bit better and to talk.
You're exposing me, man. I'm trying to get more good tips out of you.
Okay, here we go.
Final question for someone who is out there right now. They're in the trenches. They're about ready to launch, maybe a month to go. Could you share a final, either a tip or a word of encouragement or something you want them to know? And it could even be, an episode you recommend they listen to on your show or something like that. Would be great if we could end on that note.
The challenge with my show is that I have so many episodes and so much content that I have to go back and listen to them again. My wife comes in and says, "What are you doing?" Because I'll have it on because you can get the podcast on Alexa, and so and my Amazon Echo's got my podcast going. She's like, "Why are you listening to yourself?" It says, "Because I forgot what they said." And so when it comes to that, I'm not quite sure what episode for them to go listen to. But what I would say, the piece of advice I would give goes back to the passion that I have. And that is, look, you're about to do something that is scary. Now, obviously, the longtime serial ones, they're not going to find value out of this, although they might. You're about to do something for the first time that is scary, uncertain, and it's a really good chance that you're going to fail. Because half of the Kickstarter campaigns, more than half, fail. And there's a good chance you're going to be that statistic. And I don't want you to get discouraged. I want you to realize that you learn more from a failure than you do from a success. So that failure is not a failure. It's simply one more step towards your success. And so when you launch, if it's successful and off it goes, great. But if you're like the majority of people, it wasn't successful or it didn't hit the number that you wanted, stop, reevaluate, don't get discouraged, take that project, retool it, figure out what you did wrong, figure out where the message was off or the product was off, figure it out, and then put it back out there because it will be successful. I mean, there's nothing that can stop your passion if you continue to be persistent and keep going. The crowd will buy into it. Your fans will buy into it. Just because you missed the first time doesn't mean it missed. So keep going and keep trying. That would be the piece of advice that I would pass on that I have learned in all of these years. One person after another has come to me and they failed, and then they've turned around and I've said, here's what you can do to retool it. Go put it back out there. And they have. Wes Woodbury just recently was on the show for that very reason. He contacted me and said, look, I've listened to every single one of your podcasts. I did everything you asked, everything you suggested, everything your guest said, and I'm failing. What do I do? And so I had him come on the show and we talked about it, his failure. And then I had the fans come on the show and say, what should he do to be successful? And I had a fan, Brian Rosenberg, who came on and said, Rosender, who said, here's the things he needs to do. So Wes took that advice, went and retooled, relaunched. I had him back on the show again, and he was successful in funding it, got picked up by the local newspaper, got covered. It's that kind of persistence and believing that the crowd out there, Salvador, there's people like you, there's so many people who are there to help. Don't get discouraged. Just keep going because you can do this. And don't let the public judging of you somehow make it feel like you failed.
Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was a great piece of advice. Also, congrats on getting married, and we'll have to have you back soon.
That'll be great. Thanks, Salvador. This has been a great pleasure of mine. Thank you.
Let me tell you about our latest sponsor, SendPro Online by Pitney Bowes. Shipping can be complex. Things can get really confusing really fast. With SendPro Online, it's easy to save time and money no matter what you send, from letters and packages to overnights and flats. You can easily compare USPS, UPS, and FedEx in an all-in-one online tool. You can print shipping labels and stamps directly from your printer. You can even track all of your shipments and get email notifications when they've arrived. SendPro Online is only $14.99 a month, and listeners can get a free 30-day trial when you visit pb.com/crowdcrux. That's pb.com/crowdcrux. Experience the convenience of SendPro Online for yourself when you sign up for a free 30-day trial. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Hope you took a lot of great tips and advice away with our conversation with Richard Bliss, the host of the Funding the Dream podcast. One of the things that I took away was just I think the level of care and dedication that this person has to being willing to put out content, basically free content. It's kind of like for him a labor of love. Now he's starting to build his own executive coaching and executive, help kind of a business where he's teaching and applying a lot of these skills to high level executives. And if you are falling into that category at all, I recommend that you reach out to him. But also he's continuing to put out great crowdfunding content because he believes in the crowdfunding industry. And I think he believes in just individual creators being able to do the work that they love. And that's so cool to me. Another thing I took out just from my conversation with Richard was the importance of having mentors and leaders on your team and people that are a part of your team. You being, the leader basically of this crowdfunding street team, which goes out there, which works hard, which does what they all individually are good at, and puts together this great project or creates this great product and is able to get it out there to the masses. We don't really see it. You tend to see the leader of the team. Like you think about Apple, for example, you see Steve Jobs, but you don't see all the people working under him that have worked hard to make that vision become a reality, from the design to the marketing to the sales to all these different little touch points, the manufacturing, etc. That entire product experience is the result of a team working together. When you look at these incredible crowdfunding campaigns, you're like, wow, I could never do something like that. And the answer is, of course you couldn't, because that's not done by one person. It's done by multiple people working together in a team format. Someone who's good at graphics, someone who's good at marketing, someone who's good at filming the video, someone who's good at actually making the product. Great things are done by teams. You look at the pyramids, you're like, oh man, it blows your mind when you look at the pyramids, because it's like, that's incredible. I could never do that. That's insane. But you forget that this was done by lots and lots of people. I mean, back in the day, they were slaves. That's horrible, obviously. But it was done by lots and lots of people man was able to make this project, which kind of baffles us and blows our mind, But the reason is that we think as individuals, we could never do this ourselves. However, you as a team would be able to replicate the success that you see on Kickstarter. You as a team can create great architectural structures. You as a team can make a product that impacts the world and that people are raving about. They're raving fans. Your ability to be successful is limited and capped at your leadership ability. And by that, what I mean is that you could be the best marketer in the world, man. Like, you could be awesome as a product designer, but if you don't know how to do some of these other things, your success is going to be limited to what you can basically do with your own skill set. However, if you're able to acquire people who are good at what they do in different areas, if you're able to have mentors or people like me, coaches on your team who can help you succeed at a much higher level, make introductions for you, introduce you to resources and tools, and give you an expert level feedback and all that kind of like tiny switches that you can make in order to make, if you think like you're hitting a golf ball, and if you've ever done golf, like I'm a horrible golfer, but if you ever have gone to the driving range and you're trying to hit a ball straight, and like the golf instructor is like, you just need to make these tiny little tweaks, and then all of a sudden the trajectory of the ball is so different. Those tiny little tweaks can matter so much when it comes to launching a product. And even if that is changing up the title or just the way that the campaign is formatted or the sort of step-by-step strategy that you have, this can make all of the difference with a project. So if you're interested, if that sounds interesting to you and you want to schedule a one-on-one coaching call with me, where I can basically give you my expert opinion on your project, the things you've been doing thus far, answer all of your questions, do an intensive hour-long coaching call, exclusively focused, putting a spotlight basically on what you've been doing thus far, and also some advice and questions when it comes to like, what you should be doing next, the step-by-step process to actually get this thing out there, thinking a little bit about the timeline, what are things you should even be aware of that maybe aren't on your radar, all this kind of stuff we can talk about on a one-on-one coaching call. So if you're interested in doing that and booking that today, you can go to crowdcrux.com/coaching, enter your name, email, some other information there, like about how much you're looking to raise, tell me a little bit about your product, and you can square that away. We can do a one-on-one coaching call, and we can make sure that going into this project, you feel 100% confident and self-assured, and then you have a roadmap that is going to work for your specific product and for your specific category. Again, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you so much. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you next time.